Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're gonna make something like that. So I call it Psytrance Bassline for techno because obviously you can hear there is some similarity with the classic Psytrance Bassline, but obviously you need to twist it a little bit to make it fit the techno genre. So today I'm gonna show you how to do that. So we're gonna recreate everything from scratch just using Ableton stock plugin. As usual, project file will be available for free, link in the description. And yeah, let's get started. So first here I have a track which is just a sidechain track. It's just a 909 clap and that I'm gonna use as a trigger for my sidechain compression. And then I have my kick drum here. So this is a kick from my 3 Techno kick sample pack. It sounds like this. Pattern is 4 to floor obviously. So we're gonna add a bit of rumble, and for that I'm gonna use my kick verb to rack. I'll put the link in the description if you wanna find out more about this rack. It's just a rack that makes my life easier. It creates easily a rumble using reverb or delay. Today we're gonna use reverb only. By default, sound like this. So I'm gonna open the filter. So like this you hear better how it sounds. The idea is to use this reverb rumble macro, which is basically the pre-delay of your reverb, which is gonna make you rumble offbeat and it's gonna give a nice groove. So we're gonna do that. You can hear the duncan duncan doing. Now you hear it better. So obviously we're gonna filter that because there is too many information. We just want the low end. So we're gonna use our frequency and bring it down until we have something we like. And maybe reduce the Q. Okay, sounds okay. Now we're gonna add a bit of sub to make it obviously. Sub here. And finally we're gonna use a bit of sidechain. So we have something nice and tight. So next step, what I'm gonna do is usually when I have kick like this and I do peak time techno, I like to add a bit of reverb, a very gentle amount, just to add a little extra mid top end to your kick drum. It helps cut through the mix. It helps the kick breathe, fit the mix better, I found. So we're just gonna use Ableton reverb for that. And the idea is not to have like a big room, but maybe a very small room, just a little bit of reverb. You're gonna see what I mean. First we can reduce the input because obviously we don't really want too much high frequency because that creates a mess. We're gonna bring the pre-delay to 0. Maybe a shorter decay time. And another thing important to do is to reduce the diffuse because the diffuse is gonna making your reverb messier or cleaner. Like obviously if you reduce the diffuse, you have something cleaner, and that's exactly what we want here. And then reduce the direct amount. We don't want something obviously to. It's just a little detail, but it helps cut through the mix, maybe a bit more dry wet. All right, then I'm just gonna add the limiter. Okay, something like that. Okay, now we're gonna create a bass line. So the idea is you have your kick rumble and we're gonna add a bass line offbeat, very simple bass line, but which gonna help with the groove. So when I say offbeat, you go to your MIDI pattern and you go to G0 and you create offbeat. So here you have your kick every beat. Obviously you can just put it like that. Okay, and we're gonna use operator. You can basically use anything. We just need a square waveform because they are usually the one richer and very nice for bass or sub bass. And you just want to filter that. We're going to add a bit of sidechain. Even though it's playing offbeat, you know the sidechain is not going to work a lot, but it's just going to add a little bit of movement. So here you go to the sidechain and I have my sidechain track here. Up, close it. And then I will usually leave a ratio around 4 and bring down the attack because you want your compressor to react fast. Maybe a bit more release. Doesn't have much importance, and then we're just gonna maybe a bit the volume, so like this I can control here more. It just kind of support the rumble. Alright, so now we have our solid low end. The idea is to add this Psytrance type bassline. Obviously, because we have a lot of low information, we're not gonna especially need for the Psytrance bassline to have this low information. That's gonna be the first twist to the classic Psytrance bassline. So here we're gonna use a wavetable and we need a sawtooth. The reason why we use a sawtooth is because when you play a very low note with a sawtooth around G0, you get this nice juicy fatty sound, which is by default like this very hard to use with the rest of the track, but later on we're gonna process it to make it more suitable for your track. So the pattern here, it's a rolling bass line, so it's min 16. You need to put right click your grid in 1/16. We can go just one beat and we go to G0, which is up here. So I will usually go for rolling something like this. Here I'm gonna remove this note, it's in the same time than the kick, and I'm gonna use this one with a lower velocity just to add a bit more movement, dynamic. Takada, takada, takada. Okay, so now we have that. Like I said, I use a sawtooth. You can experiment a little bit with different kind of sawtooths. You have the pulse with bass. You have all kind of things that you can experiment with to get different tones. So here we're gonna use this one. Before to start designing, one thing super important I've noticed when designing Psytrance bassline is you have to be very surgical. So really like follow exactly to the value that I'm gonna say if you want the exact same sound on the end, because just a little change in the value can change the tone and the feeling of your sound. So that's what making Psytrance bassline very hard for me, is just because principle is very simple. You take a sawtooth, you put it through a low pass filter and modulate the filter very fast in order to have this transient at the beginning and this nice tone. So this is very easy to do, but then to really nail it, having something very nice, it's very hard. And you have to play with the envelope in order to get that. So like I said, you need a low pass filter that we're gonna bring down. So now we don't hear anything, but we're gonna obviously modulate. You need to click on frequency if you want to appear in matrix, and we're gonna modulate with envelope 2. So you see you get this clicky and mid-tone. That's exactly what we want. You can add a bit of resonance if you want your Psytrance bassline to be a bit sound acid, obviously. Not too crazy because you don't want an acid sound, but adding a bit of resonance can give this acid bassline feeling. And so first envelope is the amplitude, so we're gonna bring the attack at 0. And we can leave the release at 600, but bring the sustain at -10. And the decay at 335. So here it doesn't change too much, but the envelope 2, you're gonna see how important it is to follow the exact same value. Here's the trick, is to bring down the sustain to 0 because you want something very sharp and pluckier. Bring the attack at 0. And then you can play with the decay and release to make your envelope shorter, so then your filter opening is faster. And that's what's really gonna give the character to your sound. So that's a bit too much. One thing you can play with is the slope as well, so you can get something super tight, or you can get something a bit more round. You see if I go more, I got something very round. So here it's all about experimenting with the slope and your decay time to get very something that you like. So I like this because we got this fat clicky sound, and obviously this like this, if I play in the rest of the track, it doesn't gonna sound like, doesn't fit the mix. I don't know how to explain, but it needs something a bit more tighter and punchier to fit the heavy pounding techno kick. So first thing we're gonna do is add a saturator, and I'm just gonna put in medium curve. This is just to add a bit of gain. I'm gonna reduce the dry wet around 60%. Add a bit of bite a little bit. And then next step, which is the first one, super important, it's using multiband compression or even multiband distortion. I recommend to use multiband distortion. We don't have in Ableton Live, but if you have the 5-filter Saturn, it's really nice. But you can do with the classic multiband compression, because here the thing is, because of the different band and the frequency splitting, it kind of creates already something. You're gonna see how it affects the sound without even, I didn't tweak anything. and it's almost like it made the sound better already without tweaking anything. And then here I'm not gonna use the compression side of the tool. I'm just gonna use the frequency cut also of the band to shape that, and the output. So I'm doing kind of a EQing and boosting certain frequency range. But because we use this multiband compression, it kind of shapes the sound differently. So here again, you have to be very surgical, and just a little change gonna shape the sound and make it sound differently. You can see how it changed, but I'm gonna go around there and then around 1 kilo. And then I'm just gonna play with the output until I get something I like. Okay, something like this. All right, so one thing we're gonna do is to compensate the output. So you see we have something more round, but we still keep this juiciness. Now, next step where there is also a lot of room to shape and make things different is using an EQ, and there is a few tricks. So the first one, I will usually boost around 1 kilo. It's gonna boost this clicky. You can use a high shelf as well. And maybe another band around 3 kilo. Just to boost the top end. And then the next important thing is to use a low cut. So obviously you have your fundamental with your harmonics, and the idea is to come to cut right before one of the harmonics or the fundamental, but here the harmonics, and to crank up the resonance of your filter, of your EQ, to kind of create a nice resonant sound, which is gonna give a lot of character. So you're gonna see. If I put like this, I cut, it gives kind of character, but if I boost, it adds a little, it's more pronounced. For example here. You see, you can really get a nice tone. And then it's up to your taste if you wanna keep there. I like around here, it sounds very nice. Here I'm just gonna reduce a bit of the gain, so later we're gonna boost it with a saturator. And saturator, we're gonna grab it, so Alt Control if you wanna copy paste. And here we're gonna change the medium curve and we're gonna put soft sine. Which kind of just adds some volume, but a bit of harmonics and a bit of grit slightly as well. And then next important things is to use downsampling. So we're gonna use Redux from Ableton, and why we use this is because it's gonna add this little clicky and this little resonance in very high frequency. And it might seem like not really adding that much at first, but you will listen later with the reverb how it really affects the sound. So then after it's really up to you. You see how it sounds nice? I want something subtle because it adds something. You will see later with the reverb. Speaking of reverb, we're gonna put our default reverb. So here again, it's not to have like a big room reverb, it's just to have like something tight, just to give a little bit of the bass a space, just to don't be too dry and to help fit in the rest of the mix. So here again is the same idea, having a short decay, short amount, no diffuse, filter the input to don't have too much high frequency input. Maybe bring up the scale. Okay. And now let's see the reduce, how it affects the sound. I don't know, it just helped the click to enhance and cut through the mix more, and it added a little bit of punch as well. Alright, and now we have pretty much our sound. The only thing is now if you want, because we're making peak time techno, you need some things to be way much more louder and more like in your face. So for that, we're gonna use a drum bass, which is perfect for that. And even drum bass by default, even with a draw rate 0%, is gonna add some character. So then after it's a matter of taste, but yeah, good to know. And then I'm gonna use compressor to put everything in your face. Okay, and then we're gonna use crunch to really make things louder. So again, it's a matter of taste, but I feel it's make you sound slap a little bit more as well. So yeah, if you try to again compensate, say around -12. That's really up to you, but I'm gonna put it back here and I'm gonna just bring down this. Or actually I'm gonna do it live and then I'm gonna bring down to the mix, depend. And to be fair, almost it's like you don't really need sidechain compression. You can add if you want, but in the original example there was no. Yes, actually. And that's for our Psytrance bassline. So this is really like a kind of a classic Psytrance bass, a bit more techno-ish. Now, if you want to make it even more techno, what I've done is I had the kind of a stereo bass. So I used a preset of mine from one of my preset bank, which sound like this. And I'm gonna just copy the. And here I just don't want delay. And you see it's a very stereo bass, so I will put the preset as well with the rest so you can examine it, but it's just like a detune kind of sawtooth sound, you see? Like the second oscillator is detune, and then after about the filter I use the bandpass for something different, and then you have some reverb and some harsh effect to have the sound in stereo. But then I found it that adding this kind of stereo bass with you rolling Psytrance bassline in the middle quite add a nice dark tone to your sound. And then you can see if you bring everything in mono, you still have something pretty decent. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you is that basically I think it's because of the multiband compression, but because of this filtered band create some weird phase or stuff like that, if you use utility and you swap the phase of left and right, it's actually kind of changed the tone. I like this as well, to be fair. Alright, I hope you like this video. As usual, the project will be available for free, the link in the description. I should be able to make it for Ableton Live 10 as well. So yeah, thank you for watching and see you soon guys. Bye bye.